Welcome back to Authenticity Unleashed. I'm Pam Rader, your host, and we're going to dive into all the things that help lead us to living a more authentic life. Today, I was speaking at an International Women's Day event, and I had the privilege of presenting a talk on inspiring inclusion. But as I do, I tend to pull things apart and look at things from a different perspective than would be expected. Now, I know that it's customary to look at where discrimination and exclusion exists in society as a whole, within companies, within government, within countries. And that's one way to look at it. But I like to look at the places where do I personally have power to create more inclusion in my life right now? So it got me thinking about when do we start excluding others? And it really starts in childhood. You might remember a time when you were a kid and maybe you knew the answer to something or you had something to share, but you didn't because you were aware that the people around you might have some thoughts about what you were going to say. And maybe you were afraid to be rejected, afraid that they would think what you contributed was dumb or foolish. It's kind of a pivotal moment for a lot of us when we move from we to me. You see, children inherently understand belonging. They don't give a lot of thought to fitting in until they recognize that our differences can get us rejected. And in that moment, we start to go through a process where we doubt ourselves. We doubt our innate worthiness. And in doubting our innate worthiness, we try to hide parts of ourselves that we feel are undesirable. We hide away things that we perceive as being the cause of getting rejected in our lives. And then this really insidious thing happens when we stuff those parts of ourselves away. We're really cautious to look for those same perceived faults, in quotation marks, in others. And then the very judgment we fear, we actually become the wielder of, the perpetrator of. We become the judge. So we become both the victim of fear judgment and the persecutor all at once. Now, there are so many reasons for this. Often we have these messages given to us in childhood about what's weak, what's bad, what's good, what should and shouldn't be happening, how the world should be. And then we curate aspects of our personality to carefully fit into those parameters, if you will. But we lose something of ourselves and we diminish our sense of self-worth when we stuff parts of ourselves away. And then we're always on the lookout for how others might be judging us because we're busy judging them. The judgment creates separation. And that separation is what causes exclusion. When we judge, we're not curious. When we judge, we're not interested in connection. We're interested in staying safe. When we judge, it's about me, not about we. So if we really want to talk about inspiring inclusion, we have to be willing to look at all the little places in our hearts where we're not including people, where we're excluding. And you know what, folks, if you think you don't do it, I'm going to give you a really great example. I went to a concert this week with my husband. We went to see the Corb Lund Band. Now, Corb Lund is a famous Canadian country singer, folk singer. It's a very interesting crowd because he appeals to so many different genres of people. And so I walked in and I was very interested. I love people watching, very interested in all the people there. But I was on autopilot and just my thoughts were roaming as they do. And I started to get into this little game that I sometimes catch myself playing a version of comparison that's also known as the one up, one down game. And it goes kind of like this. Maybe you'll recognize this in yourself. I looked around and I saw this beautiful young woman and I thought, oh, what a beautiful outfit. She looks gorgeous. Just being complimentary, that's great. No problem yet. And then she turns around and I think, not even one line on her face. I remember that. Now I'm one down, right? 2 seconds later, my ego jumps in and tries to bolster my self-esteem by producing the thought, she probably uses too much Botox and has so much filler in her face. So now I'm one up, right? A few minutes later, I look around and this woman who had a very messy hairdo and was dressed very casually. And I thought, oh, she went for a whole night out and she didn't even like comb her hair. She looks like she just rolled out of bed. Me, one up. And then she turns and looks at me and she had the kindest eyes and the warmest smile. And I thought, oh my gosh, she's so kind and warm. And she seems really comfortable in her skin. And I bet she wouldn't judge me. Now I'm one down. Does any of this resonate with you all? This game of one up, one down? The judgment turns into comparison, which turns into us needing to bolster our sense of self-worth by one-upping with the people that we see and meet. And yet we think exclusion and discrimination are a part of the patriarchy or the government. It starts with us. Like, look at all the times that we judge and separate ourselves from people we don't even know. A lack of curiosity just has us label them and other them. I'm going to share with you the cost of the fear of judgment and how it really showed up in my life. When I was 22, I was in a marriage with a very, very sick man. He was struggling with addiction. He was struggling with mental health issues. Our marriage was violent and abusive and fraught with addiction. And I should have left. Absolutely, I should have left a long time ago. But I didn't because I was afraid to tell anyone. I was afraid what people would think of me. I was afraid that people would think I was foolish for making a mistake. I was afraid that people would think I was weak. I was afraid that people would think I was stupid. And I was more concerned with managing people's perceptions of me for fear of what they might think than I was for my own safety. Now, how that wound me up was on the floor of my bedroom, just coming to after being choked almost to death by my husband and watching him wave a butcher knife over me while he's muttering about how he's going to have to kill me now because he already beat me up and he's going to jail anyway. So my fear of judgment caused me to hide so much that I actually put my own life in danger. Of course, I had people around me who loved me. And of course, I had lots of people who would have supported me if they knew. A lot of that's my assumption. But I really want to dive into where did that really come from? And it's the messaging, the conditioning that we hear over and over again, especially as impressionable children, when we hear things like, oh, those people are lazy, or that kind of person is this way. We pick that up. And then we go about making sure that we're not those people, that we don't get judged that way, even if it means we have to exclude parts of ourselves. Now, my judgment didn't stop there. When I left the marriage with my 1-year-old son, as many of you may have known by now, my son was involved in addiction for a long time. And I'm not here to talk about his addiction, but what happened in terms of the judgment and the exclusion as he was going through it on my part. So I was so afraid that people would judge me for being a bad mom. I was afraid that people would judge my son as a loser junkie. I was afraid that people were going to have opinions that I couldn't handle. And so I tried to handle it all myself. I tried to hide it. I tried to say everything was okay. I tried to control it until I almost controlled myself into the ground and made no impact on my son's addiction whatsoever. And it was really, years and years of me trying to control, managing people's perceptions because I was so afraid of judgment. On top of course, being afraid for my son's life. But what really changed was when his addiction got really bad and he was using fentanyl. And I thought, oh my gosh, my kid could die. Like he really, really could die. I had to start thinking about how my judgments and my fear of judgments had not been serving me. And you know what happened? When I could give up my concern for looking good, my concern for what other people thought about me or about my son or about my parenting, something really magical happened. I could actually hear my inner knowing. I could hear a small, still voice inside of me. And you know what, folks? It knew what to do. The answer wasn't out there. The answer wasn't in protecting. The answer was just love him. Just love him. Just show up and love him. And, I was so busy worrying about what everyone would think about that, controlling all of that I missed that for a while. And I almost ruined our relationship. Because, if you really get to know someone who's struggling with substance abuse, no one wants to be an addict. Let me repeat that. No one wants to be an addict. He didn't need my judgment. He needed my love. I needed to let go of trying to control it all. And the only way I could do that was to stop judging him and to stop worrying about how other people were judging me. Now, my son managed to, after almost a 15-year addiction, got into this really great place where, it was last chance, folks. He was on the street, ODing, all kinds of terrible things happening. We were really afraid for his life. He had just been kicked out of a treatment center that was supposed to be the last chance treatment center. And this gentleman and his wife, Bonnie and Laura, who are amazing human beings, were brought to my son's attention that they're doing something differently, that they take people into their home and they help them through the journey of recovery, but they're doing it with a whole lot less judgment and a whole lot less rigidity and a whole lot less conformity. And my son was fortunate enough to meet Ronnie. Now, Ronnie had asked around about Nick before he decided if he was going to take him in his house and help him. And keep in mind, my son was like sleeping on the street at this point. And Ronnie asked around, and I'll tell you what, the treatment centers that he'd been to said, Nick's a lost cause. The people in the recovery community said, he's trouble. Even other using addicts were judging him as the worst of the worst. So even in his own community, he was being judged. He did not belong anywhere. But Ronnie loves an underdog. He had been that guy before. He knew what it felt like to have nobody in your corner. And so he said, the more people said that he was unsavable, the more people told him that he shouldn't take Nick, the more he wanted this kid, the more he was going to do everything he could to make sure he was okay. And so Ronnie agreed to take him in. And that was the start of my son's real healing. He's been clean 21 months at the point of this recording, and he has an amazing life. And I truly believe that it's because of the connections that he made with people who gave up judging him. Ronnie and Laura gave him the space to just be him, to make mistakes and not get kicked out, but guided through how to handle those mistakes. He had a place where he could belong, and someone saw his innate worth. Now, If we don't deem ourselves as worthy, it's pretty hard to see someone else's worth. If you don't have an apple, you can't give someone an apple. So I believe that it has to start with us, including all of the parts of ourselves that we've excluded, inviting our wholeness back into our experience without judgment, stepping into our innate worthiness, and in doing so, seeing and feeling the innate worthiness of every other being on this planet. And when we heal the division in our hearts, then we can heal the division that excludes people in our community, in our country, in the world. But we have to look at, where am I harboring judgment? Where am I othering people? And where can I drop my judgment? Where can I drop my fear of being judged and step up as a leader in reconciliation, a leader in inclusion? I once had a person say to me, if you want to belong, you must first become a place where others belong. And that really stuck with me. My yoga studio's like the island of misfit toys. Everyone belongs there. You don't even have to have a yoga outfit or a yoga mat. You can just come and we'll love you. I've created communities around inclusion for a long time, and yet still there's division in my own heart. I have to be on guard for my petty judgments that keep me separate and exclude other people. And that's what it is to get real, is to admit our own faults and flaws. And I'm not judging myself. That's my humanness. I just want to do better. I just want to keep being better, getting better. And if I'm out there blaming society and everything and everyone else, then I miss the opportunity for me to be a part of the inclusive future that I desire to be a part of. I miss my opportunity to contribute to the collective consciousness and the evolution of humanity in some way if I'm not doing my part. So my teacher, Barron, says, don't worry about what's going on in the White House. Worry about what's going on in your house. And one of my great friends and mentors and dear spiritual teachers, Joe Greenland, also known as Fox Dreamer, he also says, don't watch the wars on TV. Don't worry about all that stuff. Look at the person right in front of you. How can you help them? How can you serve them, forgive them, love them? And maybe you could extend this to yourself. Could you look in the mirror and ask yourself, how could I serve you? How could I love you? How could I forgive you so that I can be a vessel of service for humanity? Just some thoughts on International Women's Day. Happy International Women's Day to all of the amazing babes out there doing great work, challenging the status quo, shaking up business as usual. I'm so proud to walk this path with so many badass women, and I wish you all an amazing day.